Panic, it totally takes me out of who I really am. It conquers me, like I can't control panic.
Anytime I get on an airplane, it's like I want to run, but I can't.
You can feel my chest tightening up, my heart starts to pound, my palms get sweaty. The panic just comes down on me like a ton of bricks.
I feel panicky when people like crowd in on me.
It's the unknown.
My body starts shaking. It's just a crazy feeling as soon as you look down.
This is panic disorder.
How long am I going to be in here for?
You feel okay right now?
I'm going to be able to breathe the whole time.
Yes.
All right.
Panic is the fight-flight response.
What the panic is a reaction to the body's disperception that is suffocating.
Just so much is going on and you're scrambling and you're trying to figure out what the hell.
You hear your own breathing, you hear your heart, you're just consumed by it.
What bothered me the most is just seeing, my best friend, the woman I love, just completely spiral out of control.
My existence was moment to moment.
Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how anxious do you feel right now? Do you feel faint right now? Do you have any palpitations? Are you afraid of dying? Do you feel confused at all? Do things or people seem unreal? Is it hard for you to breathe or catch your breath? Dizzy or like you feel detached and apart from all of your body?
When I was a little kid, I would have a horrendous time being called on to read. To literally have to stand up and look at that page and read those words out loud in front of all those kids. I literally would start shaking and sweating and not being able to breathe and come close to fainting. I would go home and say, I can't go back again. I can't. Not even to face the class, I just couldn't go back. I just didn't want to go. Fear has been something that I've lived with my entire life, especially fear of being in public places, fear of fear, fear that fear would come. And once you have an anxiety attack or a panic attack, you never want to go there again. But as I got older and in my 20s, that's when I had my first, what you would call a panic attack. And I was in a health food store. I'll never forget this as long as I live. I was a regular customer and I knew everybody there. And all of a sudden, it was like everything became silent. I could see people's mouths moving, but there was nothing inside my head other than, and I looked down at my hands, and my hands were shaking, and I was sweating so profusely, and I could not move. I could not walk. My knees would not move. I thought, I am dealing with a physical situation here. I am breathing very deep, deep breaths and trying to get my breath. And then I made my way out of these doors that, thank goodness, they automatically opened. And I got out into the parking lot and made it to my car. And I remember getting the keys in the ignition, cranking the car up, taking this back road to my home and parking my car and not leaving for 6 months. I stayed in my house and literally cried every day. I didn't know what this was. I didn't know how to define this. You feel so isolated, so alone, so scared, so, you know, I just kept talking to God saying, help me. You know, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. You're so very involved with the fear that might hit you at any time. You feel like you're in an open field and there's a tornado coming at you, you know? I mean, that's basically the way you feel. And you're just consumed by it. I wasn't about to go on in my life. I'd rather, you know, at that point in my life, and you know, I love life. I'm crazy about life. I'm crazy about the future. I'm crazy about everything I haven't experienced. But at that point, it was beating me up so badly that, you know, I wasn't sure if I could live in my house the rest of my life. I'm not sure what would be better, to not live at all or to live like this. Well, anything would have been better than living like that. It was absolutely a time when I felt completely paralyzed. The panic, you would all of a sudden, almost like a door shut, and it go, and you don't hear anymore, and you watch people and they're walking slow. You become listening to the inside of yourself. You hear your own breathing, you hear your heart. Your heart is so loud that you think, say, you guys could hear it. And you just profusely start sweating. And if somebody really looked at you, they would think something was wrong with you. I mean, and many times when I had anything like that bad, that's why you stay at home for so long. That's why you don't trust it out there. You cannot trust this out there. I mean, I couldn't go out without feeling like I would just come unwound. So you want to just get up and scream or run, or you just want to whatever. Well, then I started having a few people to dinner at my house. So I'm sitting there at dinner, and all of a sudden, there that whole thing comes where the silence happens, and I watch the people talk, and I get up. So I just, and you go in your bedroom. You go in your bedroom, and you just collapse on the bed. And that happens over and over and over again with people.
We think millennia ago, when our ancestors lived in caves and had these kinds of challenges almost daily, that those who had this kind of reaction, this fear reaction, this panic, this surge of adrenaline that runs through your body, tended to survive. They were able to escape the saber-toothed tiger or the marauding tribe, or they were able to fight more effectively. And they passed their genes on down to us. And sometimes these days it's a curse.
The speculation here is that to defend oneself against a threat, whether one is attacking the threat, fighting the threat, or fleeing the threat, requires the body to be mobilized, for heart rate to increase, for the muscles to tense, and so forth. And some people have suggested that a panic attack is in fact this evolved reaction that just happens to be occurring at the wrong time, in fact.
Probably the one way to describe panic would be if you got up and went to work every day and tried to do your job, came home, tried to live your life. But about 3 times a day, there was a possibility you'd be struck by lightning. It wouldn't kill you, but the lightning would kind of hit you on the back of the neck or on the head, and course right through your body and come out your feet. And you never knew during the day when that was going to happen. Well, what would happen, of course, is that you could think of nothing else, except when is the next time that I'm going to be hit by this lightning?
I'm from Manhattan originally, grew up part there and part here in Syracuse. Lived quite the normal life up until my first panic attack, which would have been 1981, January 21st. I was coming home from college one day and boom, hit me hard and changed my life. It would appear to people that, well, he's got a great business, he's got a nice house, a nice car, and good friends, and I do, and I have a lot to be grateful for, but then there's also the panic in your life. I've never really been able to say, gee, this particular thing causes it. I've just never been able to put my finger on that. Typically, geography plays a role. If you go out of your sphere of comfort, then you're more vulnerable. You're always on edge. You're on edge. You don't know. Is it gonna blow up into a full panic attack where you just can't concentrate? You become afraid to drive your car because you're thinking, man, if I'm out of control of these feelings, what am I doing driving my car? I could get into an accident. I could cause somebody else to be into an accident. So there's just a lot of stuff that starts racing through your mind, and you become freaked out. You really do. And what ends up happening is, if it's really bad, you need to stop, you need to turn around, you need to go back, and you need to chill out. And then, of course, you become very depressed because you're thinking, damn, why is this happening? It shouldn't be happening. You're inadequate. You can't perform and do things that other people do. But I think more than the shame for me is just the fact that I get angry thinking, I'd like to go to St. Thomas, or I'd like to go to California, or I'd like to do this, and you can't. I have relatives, a grandmother who lives down in Jersey. It's sometimes difficult to get there. Plus the fact that she is sick and dying right now, and I have not been there in 2 years, to be very honest with you, because of this. Well, we're going to get in the car, we're going to head down. Typically, people with panic, or more significantly probably me, you tend to hide it, you internalize it. So I'm going to try and verbalize what I'm feeling as I'm going through it. But it's always been my ideal to hide it. So, and I think most people do, but as we head down the road, you'll see me getting tenser and tenser and tenser. Some people, I guess, would cry or whatever, but that's not going to happen with me. It never has. I don't know, but it's more internal. Feeling just my stomach is very tight right now. My throat's very tight. And I'm feeling dizzy, very dizzy right now. I feel like you feel like you're disassociated with everything around you. You don't feel like you belong. It's dark out. It's misty. I just want to go back to where it's more comfortable, where I don't have these feelings. Right now my back is tense, my legs are tense, my mouth is dry.
I can't breathe. I'm tense. I'm on the verge of having a full-fledged panic attack, and I don't want to go any further. I don't want to. I can't go any further. Whoa, too fast, too fast. I'm trying to fight the feeling of turning the car around and going back. Just trying to be here and then be okay and continue on. I want to turn around. I want to go back.
The notion of sort of a safety zone or an area of safety signals to it, or sort of a geographical safety zone, is usually used in reference to the problem of agoraphobia. People who often have panic attacks will develop agoraphobia. What that means is that there are certain areas that provoke considerable trepidation and anticipatory anxiety. They tend to avoid these certain areas. There's other areas where they feel relatively comfortable. But of course, people with panic and agoraphobia don't fear these places per se. What they fear is experiencing uncued panic attacks in places where safety is not present, where help may not be available, where escape may not be easy.
This is a patient with panic disorder. What we've been looking at recently is looking at this brain area here, the temporal lobe, but specifically the hippocampus. And this area is some of the data that we're analyzing now. We're showing some changes in the structure of this part of the brain.
Yeah, the hippocampal finding is interesting in relation to the studies that suggest the hippocampus is involved in fear conditioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe some of those agoraphobic symptoms in panic may be related to this finding. One concept that I think most researchers agree upon is that there are many forms of panic disorder. It is likely that there are many types of panic disorder with different causes. Another area of agreement is the brain circuitry that probably mediates the symptoms of panic disorder. What we think is happening when somebody is experiencing a panic attack is that the emotional circuits, which in a sense are neurons and neurochemicals connected together, that the emotional circuits of the brain that mediate anxiety and alarm are turning on. There's been a lot of research now to utilize the techniques of brain imaging to see what changes in the brain are actually occurring when an individual is experiencing panic attacks.
Now, the pathology or the pathophysiology, as we say, of panic disorder is both changes in brain structure and function. And we've been able to pinpoint changes in brain structure and function in panic disorder using different imaging devices. And the hippocampus is important because it's not only involved in memory, but also we feel is involved in emotion and forms this circuitry of areas that mediate emotion. We can use other kinds of imaging devices and show changes in brain function and also in changes in binding of different types of drugs. And the body has to be able to cope with fear or extreme stress in a way that will promote survival. And one of the methods by which it does this is by releasing natural Valiums in the brain, just as natural opiates are released in the brain during extreme stress. And this probably helps regulate the fear response.
And I was the one that was in my family that always had a dream about being this exceptional athlete. Thank God he gave me that talent. By the different coaches and the different people I met through my life helped me take it to another level. At the University of Texas, I probably never played a football game in front of less than 70,000 people. And I said, gee, all those people are going to be watching and seeing me, you know. I never was spooked about none of that. I thought I was supposed to be at a point in my life that after I had done all that football stuff, and I'm supposed to be able to enjoy all this, and all of a sudden, you know, something spoiled that. One day I was on my way back to Houston, and I went through this little town called LaGrange, Texas. I got to this red light, and I went to pull off, and something happened in my chest. My heart, it just felt like something left my body, you know. It's like somebody coming and taking something away from you that's been in there all your life, and you notice that's there, and then my heart started racing, and then I started kind of like hyperventilating. I mean, I just didn't feel like Earl felt 5 minutes ago. It's like when the light turned green, I didn't know whether to take off or maybe stay there for a while. I started thinking immediately, you know, that my father died of a heart attack at a young age. Gee, I got 2 boys. Maybe all this stuff is going on. And that was the very first time that I was at the point that I didn't know what had happened to me, like for 10 or 12 minutes, you know. A doctor lived across the street, and he came over and checked me out, and I'm crying, I'm sweaty, and he's saying everything is okay, and I'm saying, no, man, I had a heart attack, I had no idea. My wife decided to get me an ambulance and take me to the hospital. Then I was embarrassed and I just let it all go. I stayed in for a week, and they was running all these tests on me. And I was continually having problems. And so I just locked myself off from the world, and I just lived like that. I just wouldn't go outside. I liked the dark. I just liked having all the windows down, the blinds closed and all that, and I couldn't stand any noise. The guy had 36-inch thighs and weighed 236 pounds. Was a little bitty rubber thing, you know, that he couldn't control himself. It wasn't no more of this tough stuff. Say like that big game, that Monday night game, all that speed everybody's seen going down there, that guy number 34. And you see that number 34 runs down the field and everybody's all excited. And that's a little bit like panic, you know. It's just so much is going on and you're scrambling and you're trying to figure out what the hell, you know. And then you just keep going, and then that's when you say, gee, I gotta go to the emergency room, you know? And if you could just get to the emergency room, everything is fine. At first, I stumbled a lot, and I tried to picture, was there ever a day I played football and I felt like this? No. I don't know where that came from.
Okay, we're going to begin the study by placing some electrodes. These are to measure your heart rate throughout the study.
To try to define panic, we have to go beyond the symptoms and to try to figure out what physiological changes occur when the panic is on.
Next, I'm going to be placing this nasal cannula, which would be right under your nose, and this is to measure carbon dioxide that you breathe out.
Probably the most important hypotheses relate to the idea that panic has something to do with respiration.
Okay, this plastic will create a seal on the canopy.
That's something to do with breathing, with the breathing control mechanism being out of whack, not working properly.
Okay, this will be a little bit tight around your neck. And maybe this slightly.
We'll be able to breathe it.
Yes.
I think what the panic is a reaction to the body's misperception that it's suffocating. Now that's open to experiment. People can actually study what occurs during acute suffocation.
The best way of doing it is with a substance that is naturally produced, which is carbon dioxide in the system. So what we're trying to do is we are trying to vary the amount of carbon dioxide in the air that they are breathing in. So we're adding 5%, 7% carbon dioxide to the air. And in many situations, that's enough to produce an anxiety episode in these patients.
How long am I going to be in here for?
You'll be there approximately 45 to an hour.
We'll be able to breathe the whole time?
Yes.
Under normal circumstances, the only time your carbon dioxide levels will be rising is when you're not breathing right and when you're essentially suffocating, which then clued us on to the possibility of a suffocation alarm mechanism. Therefore, what we expect the carbon dioxide challenge to do is it sort of mimics what we think is going on inside the person. And we think the person is hypersensitive to their own carbon dioxide.
And the most prominent theory is that these patients have a carbon dioxide receptor in the brain, a sensor, that is going to detect the level of carbon dioxide concentration in the air.
Okay, I'm going to be asking you some questions now on how you're feeling throughout the study.
There are certain antidepressant medications, anti-panic medications that specifically will down-regulate those receptors in the brain. And there are certain psychotherapies that also do the same thing. They will be taught a different kind of a breathing pattern, and they will slow down their breathing. And in combination with various medications, they usually produce a down-regulation of these receptors in the brain.
There are studies going on today, right now, that are designed to test whether a purely drug-based approach or a purely cognitive behavioral-based approach do as well as one another, and whether combining them actually confers any additional benefit. Right now, the data don't necessarily support the notion that both approaches are necessary, although some people believe that's the case. But this, again, is an area of cutting-edge research.
I will have to leave the house in about 5 minutes and feel very dizzy, lots of anxiety. I need to start doing my diaphragmatic breathing, which is really important.
Suzanne is a young woman in her late 20s, single.
Tend to hyperventilate when I get nervous and just start breathing in the chest, which leads to all the symptoms of panic. So
she's living alone for the first time. All of her family live on the East Coast, so she's basically surviving on her own out here, and that in and of itself is a major accomplishment for her.
This is kind of like the helpless stage, where I just feel like, God, I don't want to do this. My stomach's cramping up. I'm gonna, something bad is gonna happen. It's one thing to be with Michelle, but let's translate this to real life. All the negative thoughts start going through my head.
Something that's important about Suzanne is that she hasn't been working for quite a while. She's been out of a job. She's had a couple of temporary jobs, but the panics have really been so disabling for her that she hasn't been able to work.
The saddest thing for me about having panic in my life is that I am not free. I am not a free person to do what I want to do and to live up to the goals and aspirations that I have. I am not free. I'm shackled.
It's time to go.
In terms of Suzanne's treatment, we've spent time teaching her about the basics of what panic attacks are, teaching her ways to slow down her breathing and to change the way she thinks so that she doesn't jump to the conclusion that she's about to die or go crazy. And now we're in the mode of exposure.
One of the techniques that behavior therapists use in working with people with panic disorder and agoraphobia, people who develop secondary fears of driving in cars, riding in elevators, and so forth, is to, in a graduated fashion, assist them entering these situations, experiencing the feared bodily sensations in the feared context, and learning that nothing bad actually happens.
How do you feel about the trip?
I'm nervous. I already feel a little head rushy, off kilter.
So you've got some symptoms, some sensations?
Yeah. I'm just a little dizzy. Just a little, I'm scared, nervous.
Okay.
So my therapist, Michelle, has now turned off the air conditioner. It's about 105 in the valley today because I have this fear of suffocating and then passing out. That's how I always feel when it gets really hot.
But the goal is to learn that feeling hot does not mean passing out.
Okay.
That you can feel hot and short of breath, but that does not mean that you're going to pass out. It doesn't mean that you're about to die. Slow breaths. Okay, so the traffic's bad. A little slow.
And I can't breathe.
There was that statement again.
Okay, I know. I feel like I can't breathe. Ugh, now my ears are going.
Okay. Take some slow breaths. This is one of the hardest things.
I don't feel like I'm doing well at all.
Okay, but you're driving. You are breathing.
This is really bad.
But
I feel like I'm gonna lose it.
Take some slow breaths. That's a good.
Like, oh God, full-blown panic.
Are you in panic?
I'm so dizzy.
Okay. Let yourself feel the feelings. This is the best time to really learn that it's just feelings.
My head feels like it's just gonna implode.
Okay. Take some slow breaths. People experience panic in different ways. There is a core set of features. Everybody gets the rush of arousal and thoughts of catastrophe, but it's expressed in slightly different ways. In Suzanne's case, as an outside observer, you don't see that much, except that she starts to tense up and she became very teary.
It's so hard to describe it, but basically it's just pure terror. It's just, I'm going to die. I know the physiological reasoning. I know exactly why this is happening. Intellectually here, I know this. But inside, I'm going to die. It's over. And eventually I can fight that off and understand it. But when that first wave hits, that's just the feeling. It's just pure terror and that I don't want to die. That's the main thing.
I took a vow I had to beat this or befriend it or, educate myself or live with it the rest of my life, but at least the two of us would somewhat be combative at some times and maybe peaceful at others. I don't know. I had no idea who to call. I didn't perceive this as a medical problem. I thought it was just something that I personally had by myself and I was going to have to deal with, but I didn't know how I was going to do it. And they were talking about agoraphobia on the radio. It's the way God works. It's amazing. And I thought, the panic started in my head like, what if there is a doctor? What if there's somebody that can help me? Then that means I would have to get dressed and walk out the door and get in the car. Anyway, to make a long story short, we got on the phone, and I got this wonderful, wonderful man called Dr. Ronald Doctor. Doctor. Yeah, it's funny. But I remember him so well. I'll never forget him as long as I live. And I walked in that door, and I sat down, and I found someone who knew what this was about. And he unraveled such a mystery for me.
From my point of view, I have to get into how they live their lives, who they are, how they feel inside, and relate to them, and get close to them. I think just dealing with symptoms doesn't address the person. It's like getting a car wash.
Dr. never really, he didn't prescribe drugs, so it was not a matter of medications. My therapy was about awareness and education. And it lessened for me those horrible panic attacks. I mean, you have to understand how taxing it is physically to have these. You're just absolutely mentally and physically gone, exhausted.
People feel very alone with this problem, and they feel, and it destroys their self-esteem because they can't do what they'd like to be able to do and function the way they want to function. So to have somebody understand it and give them some hope is really, really important.
Every day, every morning getting out of bed is a challenge. For several months, that was not even something I could do. What's happening in your mind is going a mile a minute. I'm never going to get any better. Am I going crazy? Am I seriously ill? Do I have a serious physical condition? What if I can't get out of bed? What if I can never get out of bed again? You know, what if my husband has to go to work and I can't take care of the baby? I became so anxious at all times. By anxious, I mean short of breath, feeling faint, sick to my stomach, very consumed.
The person that I married was this vivacious and beautiful and just very outgoing, energetic person, and over the past several months, this disorder has completely stripped her of that.
My husband no longer could even leave the house and leave me alone because I couldn't. I didn't physically think I could handle it. I was very frightened of getting sick on my own or being away from him.
I could see it transpire over the course of 10 or 15 minutes. Getting ready to leave for work, I could see a look in her eye, and then 5 minutes later, as I was packing my briefcase, that look was there, and it was deep. It was very bothering to see her look like that, and it was a simple matter of leaving for work in the morning. There was a lot of frustration involved with that on my part, frustrated at becoming angry, frustrated at not being able to help her. There was nothing I could do.
There's a lot of different ideas as to what may have caused the anxiety, but my life basically stopped.
It consumed us. It absolutely consumed us from the time we woke up in the morning till the time we went to sleep, and then sometimes in the middle of the night also.
How are you feeling?
I'm a little nervous, but not too bad.
Any physical sensations you're feeling right now?
My stomach's a little knotty, but other than that, a little shaky, like but not too bad. I came because I was at the end of my rope. I came to this clinic to get my life back. I came to this clinic to get my husband's life back. I came because I need to take care of my son, and I need to be a good mom. And one of the most important reasons I came is for me, because I needed to get better. I was sick of being sick.
You want to take the elevator by yourself?
exposure therapy, which tries to bring out the worst of the panic attacks. In my situation, what would cause a panic attack was being away from my husband or being in a situation that I'm unfamiliar with. A subway ride. Being in that situation, it was dark at times, or it was underground, and you knew that, and just the culmination of all the people in one area, and you couldn't get out, there was no way to get out, that just induced a lot of panic.
So, on a scale from 0 not at all to 8, very high anxiety. What's your anxiety level now?
Right now, it's about 6.
It's about 6.
So the longer the elevator doors close, the more it comes up. It was very difficult when we went through those panic attacks because it's very frightening, but it helps you to realize that once you're in the midst of a panic attack, 1, you're not going to die, and 2, you're not going to collapse, and that you're going to be okay once it's over, and that it is going to get over.
People who are experiencing recurrent panic attacks can often become quite demoralized by this, especially when they do not understand what's happening to them and so forth. And thoughts that they would be better off dead sometimes will come to mind. Now, whether having panic attacks per se increases a person's risk for attempting suicide, committing suicide, is a controversial issue.
There is a correlation between panic and suicidal ideation. Although it's not quite clear if it's really the panic disorder or the depression that comes with the panic disorder that causes that to happen. Most clinicians think it's when the depression sets in that you see more of the suicidality.
I was in a deer blind in South Texas, and I had a .270 rifle in my hand. We woke up like at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and everything was just perfect, you know, to go hunting. And when I got in there, and I found the deer that I wanted, I guess that's when I started thinking about killing myself and how I could position the rifle in my legs and do it. And then I decided no. So when it got to be like 9:30, 10 o'clock, we went back to the house, and it's like we're supposed to be on the ranch for like 3 or 4 days. So I packed my stuff and got the hell out of there. And when I got to the main street, you know, it was one of the happiest moments of my life, and yet I still wanted to do it. And that's a hard thing to sit here and not only admit to yourself, but admit to the world, you know. And they would think that this guy that has it all, I mean, why think like that? But that was because I had something and I was uneducated about what I had.
There have been some recent tests that I have had to, well, they've been huge gifts, to be honest. I mean, just this last year has been a real test for me, and that was when I did the movie LA Confidential. And so much focus and attention and spotlight was put on that film, and then on me. All this time being an actress or anything, anytime they stuck a microphone in my face like this, words just left me. Words would strangle me. I won the Oscar, and I am so still, I don't even know how to talk about that. It's amazing. The words, there are no words. Just the thought. I mean, prior to all this happening, if ever a thought was even, when I was taking a shower, that I might, for some reason, win and have to go on the stage and say anything, I'd just break out in a sweat.
221.
Dan Cox from Variety. 4 years ago, you were struggling.
You come up against that fear and say, okay, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it afraid. And that's where I've come to in my life. I'm scared, but I'm going to do it afraid. And you know what? It's helped me. People have seen me shaking on a stage, in an interview. They've seen me. And I was always so terrified that they would see me. Alec has seen a great change in me since we were first together. I think he was baffled by it. I think he wasn't sure it really existed. I think it was very hard for him to understand my being, well, stricken at times. Because he says, look at you. What? You've been an actress? What? I mean, you've been in, you do this, you do that, you've flown all over the world, you've done this, you've been in front of the camera and everything. So it's very difficult for spouses or for family members to understand and to have patience with this, and really gentle patience with this. I didn't find many people in my life to have patience with this at all.
This is not a trivial condition. People are suffering a great deal from this. It's a very distressing condition. It's a very common one that was far more common than people had ever expected. At the same time, however, it's also one of the most treatable psychological or psychiatric disorders today. Most of the psychological treatments, the cognitive behavioral treatments, are finding at the end of 12 to 16 weeks of this sort of treatment, sometimes shorter, that 80 to 90% of the people will often experience cessation of the panic attacks, reductions in their fear of panic, reductions in their anxiety sensitivity, reductions in their avoidance. Similar types of findings have also been accomplished in pharmacologic trials, where certain medications were able to suppress the panic attacks at roughly equivalent rates. So this is clearly one of the success stories, and people who are suffering from panic disorder have all the reason to hope that they can get this thing under control.
I'm not naked any longer. I'm not standing as a frail kid standing there alone. You know, I've been heavily clothed, and I've had so much help and so much guidance. I challenge myself with this beyond, because, you know, when I take my last breath, it's not going to be because I am having a panic attack. That's for damn sure. You know, there's a story that a lady handed me, and I don't have the paper with me. I should have brought it with me, but it's about someone asking if someone giving someone an assignment to go to war with fear or go to battle with fear. And they go, you know, fear, I want to ask you, what can I do to conquer you? What do I do? And fear took a deep breath and said, well, my two strengths are I get in your face and I speak very loudly. She says, well, how do I conquer you? And fear says, the only way you can conquer me is don't do what I say. And that made so much sense to me. So every time I go out and I take a deep breath and there's any anxiety in me, I say, okay, fear, I hear in my head what you're telling me to do. And I'm not going to do it. That's it.